Michael J.
How you doing this week?
Fantastic. How you doing?
I'm doing very, very well, especially in the magical sense.
Oh yeah, I mean this Pro Tour was pretty freaking sweet, right?
Yeah,
like a bunch of awesome people crushing it, a star-studded top 8, and a bunch of awesome new decks that definitely proved the case that it's not just a one deck format.
Well, so I thought it was cool. You know, Bant Company did well. You know, it got two spots in the top 8, including one in the hands of arguably it's pretty awfully impressive career person in Luis Scott Vargas, right? I don't know where you put him in the pantheon. Very
top
high.
5 all time.
You know,
I mean, he's coming for Paula. He's coming for him.
Like, so,
you know, like
this guy is an absurd.
Definitely, yeah. Luis Scott Vargas has definitely cemented his place alongside Gabriel Nassif, Paulo Vitor de Medeiros, John Cinco, and Kai Bodie as top 5 players of all time. You know,
I mean, and Luis. A lot of people don't know this. I mean, they must know this now because they said it in the coverage 100 times, right? Not since John Finkel got his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th top 8s, which is way back in 1997, 1998, has there been any player who top 8'd 3 consecutive Pro Tours. Not even Kai, when he won all those Pro Tours in a 2.5-year stretch, got 3 consecutive.
That's for individual, 3 consecutive individual.
Individual, yeah.
Kai, yeah, I think Kai did it if you count the fact that 2 of his were team Pro Tours, which is how he did it, you know.
But regardless, super, super duper impressive showing from Luis, and with a deck that had some surprises, I think is worth talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I did want to note one other thing on the John Luis spectrum. Luis also joins John with the distinction of being John Finkel was the only up until Luis only a Hall of Fame worthy resume after being elected to the Hall of Fame.
Oh, so you're saying that Luis actually now is gunning for a Hall of Fame eligible post Hall of Fame resume?
Well, like he's already got 3 top 8s. And he's got some tops. He's got a bunch of other good finishes, and this is to say nothing of his community contributions.
I think that his 3 consecutive top 8s. But if you just said, let's assume the guy has 150 pro points. Look at the last few Pro Tours, 3 consecutive top 8s, along with being a key contributor in the booth, a key columnist on Daily MTG, columnist in Star City, and the vice president of Channel Fireball. I think he's probably got community contributions locked down. He is close to number 1 community contributions all time. Like I don't know, he's certainly in the top 5 pantheon conversation for community contributions
without question. But let's talk about some of the tech that he had in his Bant Company decks from this past weekend, which is fairly stock as far as Bant Company decks go, right? Like his main deck.
2 things.
His main deck.
He's got 26 land, right? So there,
that's actually part of it.
We're waffling between 25 and 26, but of 26 lands, he makes room for additional land. Some people only play 25, but only 2 lumbering falls. Right? That's interesting. And then he's got Fortified Village.
So actually, the way that Josh was describing it, Josh Everlayton was describing it. Yeah, so they cut the 3. Basically, they took the SCG Open winners list from a few weeks ago, and they cut the 3 Thalias to add 2 more 2-drops and a land. And then, in addition to that, they made one other important change to the land. They took out the Canopy Vistas and replaced them with
Fortified Village.
With Fortified Village, right? Exactly. And they said that the Fortified Village technology was also important, but it was definitely important to bring the curve down, just so that the deck had a better, it was just too bad every time they missed on 2. Like, they really wanted to play 2 into 3 into either a Collected Company or another 3.
It's super interesting which 2-drops they chose. So there's a 4th Duskwatch Recruiter in this deck, which, I'm very happy to see the 4th Duskwatch Recruiter, and 1 copy of Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which is it's just bringing it back about 5 minutes, right? Dial back.
And the Duskwatch Recruiter, I mean, they were basically just like, we want as many of the good ones as possible. They considered Sylvan Advocate the best, Duskwatch Recruiter would be the next best, and then Jace to be the next. But something else that's important is that they wanted to make sure that they could make their sideboard plan work. And Duskwatch Recruiter is actually a very important part of some of their sideboard plans. In addition, they found Duskwatch Recruiter to be very important for fighting Spellqueller battles. When your opponent plays if you just play a Duskwatch Recruiter into, then you don't have to worry about the fact that you're kind of just froze out on turn 3. But you can't play anything on turn 3, or else your opponent can just Spellqueller it and starts, snowballing. And the ability to actually activate your Duskwatch Recruiter is a real good way to spend your third turn instead of walking face first into a Spellcaller. The sideboard card that they wanted, one of the sideboard cards they really wanted to find is the Angel, the new Angel from Eldritch Moon. That's 6 mana for a 4/3 flyer. That when played when it comes into play, you tap all. Exactly, you tap all of your opponent's creatures.
So tell me about this guy. He doesn't seem to make sense in the strategy, right? It's an expensive drop. Costs well out of the range of Collected Company itself, so it's not a hit with Collected Company. It's weirdly sized, right? So it's a 4/3 for 6 in a format full of outstanding angels. This uncommon angel is not one that I would think is the guy that we're going to go to for our almost Pro Tour winning deck.
So the key to this one is that it's a couple things. First, it breaks the mirror. That's its primary purpose, is that when you're playing the Bant Company mirror, the game gets really locked up. Both players have tons of creatures in play. Most of them have a toughness slightly bigger than their power. There's no profitable attacks to be had. Archangel Avacyn could just blow you out. You can't really make any forward progress. Nobody can and both players can draw as many cards as they want. Well, with Duskwatch Recruiter, you can cycle through your deck and effectively find one copy of Subjugator Angel that's conveniently expensive enough that it can't be spellqualified. And it will tap all of your opponent's creatures, and you kill them in one big hit. And sometimes you can it's very easy to get enough power in place so that you actually can kill them in one hit, even if they were to flash down several surprise blockers. So if you look at these Bant Company decks, for the most part, they have almost no answer whatsoever to an opponent just like in a standoff, eventually casting Subjugator Angel and attacking for lethal.
So I've never played the Bant Company mirror, so especially not in a tournament setting. So what you're saying is that what will often happen, especially in sideboarded games, is for both players to just be in a situation where they're just accumulating a ton of material and then nobody can attack profitably, right?
Exactly.
Cool. So just to dial this back a week, we talked about green-white tokens, the resurgence of green-white tokens at SCG Baltimore in the hands of Osip Levitovich. And I talked to Osip about that after, we were able to record. And he said some interesting things. One of the ones that was really important, I thought, was, the Bant Company guys they're so reliant on Spellqueller for tempo, and they play in this way that's just all around the tempo of Spellqueller, that they actually fall into a zone where they're going to get destroyed by 5s, or 6s in this case, right? Where all they can do is basically accumulate creatures if they haven't killed you yet, and then they end up losing even to cards like Archangel Avacyn. Osip's argument was that he thought the evolution of Bant was to go to 4 Archangel Avacyn main deck and actually to remove Collected Company from the main deck, which I thought that would be really strange until he told me what his idea was. And he said, I think that Tamiyo Field Researcher is just a better 4, given how the format's going. And you can't have too many 4s, and you can't have too many non-creature spells if you're going to go Collected Company. And Luis is one of the first people to play Bant Company to bring Tamiyo. He's only got it as a 2-of in his sideboard, but I don't know if you watched the coverage. My God, was it impressive!
Oh yeah, I mean it's a super powerful card to begin with, but it's also just really well positioned at the moment.
The thing that I oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, the thing that I like the best about Tamiyo Field Researcher in watching Luis's games was how often, I don't know if it's like often's the right word, but the fact that he was able to repeatedly beat Emrakul after it had been resolved. That you think of Emrakul, it's probably not fair to say that Emrakul is just a game over card, right? But it feels like that a lot of the time. But Luis would just have Tamiyo and then just do his business all over the Emrakul, no problem. And I thought that was really impressive, personally.
I didn't actually. I mean, I don't know how much he actually beat Emrakul, but I also know that there was a little bit of a happy accident because they weren't super prepared for Emrakul for this event. But this Emrakul, obviously, protection from instants and nothing in it's protected from planeswalkers. You do have to be careful, though, because often the person with Emrakul can just make you lose your Tamiyo anyway.
Yeah, if it has only 2 loyalty, giving it -2, sure, it's going to mess it up.
But the ripping in Emrakul, if your opponent hits you with Emrakul after decimating your board and knocks you from 20 to 7, it's not over if you draw Tamiyo that very next turn. I mean, you can just lock down Emrakul and start to claw your way back in.
Yeah, even for multiple turns.
I think it's worth noting that the format very, very much adjusted to both Bant Company and Green-White tokens. Bant Company was one of the most popular decks at the Pro Tour, but it actually it only won about 49%, which was kind of interesting. It slightly underperformed, and I think that was in large part to the fact that everybody knew that was public enemy number 1. Now, obviously, in the hands of some great players, there were some people who put up great finishes, and it's not like when everybody in the format guns for you and you're still 49%, that's better than Jund can say. But
or Fairies.
The one that was actually Fairies was a little bit more of everybody guns for you and you're 54%. But the Green-White tokens was actually the worst performing major archetype. It was
finally
5% of the field on day 1, and 0% of the winning record metagame. Literally 0 people in the tournament that registered Green-White tokens had a winning record with their Green-White tokens deck to play all 10 rounds.
That kind of makes me happy.
So that's the format was, and this was in large part to how much, OSIP's win definitely drew a lot of eyes, and I think a lot of people were very much focusing on Green-White tokens as well. And Green-White tokens is a format that is eminently beatable if you try. You notice all the black-green Delirium decks, which were very, very popular, more popular, in fact, than Bant Company. If you add up all the different shades of green-black Delirium, that was actually the most popular archetype, and it performed very well. And if you look at all their decks, the most popular way to play green-black Delirium was with Languish. But even more importantly, if you look at the breakout decks, the other breakout new deck besides Green-Black Delirium variants was the Merge decks. And the Merge decks, not just T-Merge, though. There's actually many other ones. There was the 4-color Merge with zombies. There was the T-Merge. There was there was Red-Green Delirium. I'm sorry, I guess that's not one of the Emerge decks, but the ramp red decks were also important for all being Kozilek's return decks. And all that adds up to put a lot of pressure on the green-white tokens.
That's interesting.
But speaking of T-Merge...
in the last format, one of I thought that that green-red ramp was going to be one of the emergent decks after the Pro Tour, but it was actually held badly in check by green-white tokens. Right, so it's interesting if there's a reversal there. Do you want to go to talk about the emerge decks? I think the emerge decks are probably
let's start with the T-Merge deck, because I think that the T-Merge deck was actually first of all, it was the breakout deck of the tournament, but second of all, the T-Merge deck I think helps it does the best job of highlighting a whole bunch of the cards, because there's really 5 cards from Eldritch Moon. 5 cards from Eldritch Moon that have completely changed everything, that have revolutionized everything. One of them is Spellqueller, but everybody knew about that one.
Can I try to guess the other 4?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to go with Elder Deep-Fiend.
Correct.
How about Grapple with the Past?
No, but it's possible that it should count, because Grapple with the Past is more popular than a bunch of the others, but it doesn't ever show up in its own independent use. These other ones have their own purposes, like mixing and matching with each other, whereas Grapple with the Past fuels all of them.
I mean, are you...
Not all of them, just a bunch of them.
Are you including Emrakul?
Emrakul would be one, yeah. Elder Deep-Fiend, Emrakul.
Gnarlwood Dryad, who you've been high on for forever.
No, another great card, but more of a role player. Popular, great card, more of a role player.
See,
I'll skip to the chase.
Yep.
Ishkana, Graph Widow, which we've talked about extensively, and Liliana, the Last Hope, which we've also talked about extensively. I think Liliana, the Last Hope. I know, no. Team Merge doesn't use all of them. I'm talking about the 5 that have revolutionized the format. See, Liliana has helped pave the way for Team Merge, though, because Liliana helps dictate what are the creatures that are playable. And because the 1-cost 2-1s are just not playable in this format, Humans is dead. Runner deck is dead. Because all those things, Spirit's dead. Because Liliana the Last Hope has successfully killed all of those decks, it has really changed the nature of how you build a Team Merge deck. And I'll do some of these other decks. And obviously the Team Merge deck is using Ishkana, Graph Widow, it's using Kozilek's Return, not Kozilek's Return, I'm sorry, Ishkana, Graph Widow, Emrakul, and the Elder Deep-Fiend.
And then there's also some arguments you can make for some cards that have who've been around but have just gotten completely new lives breathed into them via the Team Merge archetype. And you can't even imagine building this deck without them, right? Like, well, maybe you can imagine it, but you probably wouldn't now. Like Pilgrim's Eye, for example. Right?
Oh, no, you can do it without Pilgrim's Eye. Actually, see, Pilgrim's Eye is a very controversial one. The majority of people in the Team Merge archetype don't play Pilgrim's Eye. If you look at, like, the other Team Merge deck, the top 8,
Andrew Brown.
Played by Andrew Brown, yeah, he actually declined to play Pilgrim's Eye, instead wanting to play with, he was focusing on the 0-3 for 2. What is it called?
Let's go over these two decks. So Andrew Brown and Owen Turtenwald both top-8'd with Team Merge decks, but they have very, very different focuses despite having a fair amount of overlap, right?
Yep.
So Andrew's deck has 24 lands. Owen's deck only has 21. However, Owen's deck includes Corrupted Graphstone, which is a 2-mana artifact, enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it for a color, a single color of any card in your graveyard. So if you have Kozilek's, actually that's a bad example. If you have Grapple with the Past in your graveyard, you can tap it for green, right? If you had Chandra in your graveyard, you could tap it for red. So subtly, this is a card. If you have any cards in your graveyard that are of a color, it's like a little bit of a Fellwar Stone, but it's also just a kind of a relatively cheap way of getting an artifact into his deck that helps him with Delirium, right? So that's one aspect of this card. So Owen has 4 copies of Nissa's Pilgrimage. Andrew has none. They both have 4 copies of Gather the Pack. And then their instants are the same. They both have 4 Kozilek's Return and 4 Grapple with the Past. Owen has 4 Vessel of Nascency. So between Corrupted Graphstone, Vessel of Nascency, and Nissa's Pilgrimage, Owen is able to cheat a little bit on lands, which is, I think, what helps explain. And also, I guess he has Pilgrim's Eye, right? So if he gets his first 2 or 3 lands, Owen can use cards like Pilgrim's Eye and Nissa's Pilgrimage to get the next few land drops. But Andrew doesn't have those cards like you noted, so he has 3 more lands. But the thing that's really an interesting divide to me is that Andrew's deck, he's got like Matter Reshaper, Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. He has 4 copies of Wretched Gryph, but his top end of his deck isn't super busted, right? He's got like Lashweed Lurker and Elder Deep-Fiend. Those are only Elder Deep-Fiend is only a transitional card in Owen's deck. Owen has 3 copies of Emrakul the Promised End. So his deck is almost a turbo Emrakul deck, not just a Team Merge.
Right. Yeah, actually, the thing that's so brilliant about the Pantheon deck, they took the Team Merge decks, which were often like Andrew Brown's deck. Andrew Brown's deck was certainly the more traditional style of Team Merge. The Pantheon guys, they actually took the Team Merge archetype and blended it with Ramp, like Reed Duke's red-green Eldrazi Ramp deck that he also top-8'd with.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen
by blending both of them.
It's not common to see Owen and Reed divided on deck. Certainly not in the same Pro Tour top 8.
Yeah, I think they go different ways more often than I think you might realize. But they certainly don't default to playing something different. Reed is definitely much more of a mid-range or ramp player, whereas Owen will often play. He'll be on board with the brew a little bit more often, or a control deck a little bit more often. But in this instance, I think that they already had this ramp deck that's like what Reed played, and they already had a teamer deck, and they actually hybridized the two.
I love it. I think Owen's deck is the coolest.
The Andrew Brown style is actually more dedicated to the Elder Deep-Fiend lock, because what they do, one of the benefits they get from playing 24 lanes is that they can make room for some Sanctum of Ugins. Now, with the Pantheon style, room for electric color. They don't have room for all of them, and they ended up opting for Vessel of Nacy instead of Sanctum of Ugin. But, yeah, both decks are capable of chaining Elder Deep-Fiends, and the Brown deck just considers that's an A. That's the whole thing. You don't until you die. Playing an Elder Deep-Fiend, and then sacrificing Sanctum of Ugin to another Elder Deep-Fiend, and then sacrificing the Elder Deep-Fiend so that you can cast this new Elder Deep-Fiend, and then using Grapple with the Past in order to get back the first Elder Deep-Fiend, and then sacrifice the second Elder Deep-Fiend to cast the first Elder Deep-Fiend, and you can actually just chain Elder Deep-Fiends together in such a way so that your opponent never gets to play another card. Next thing you know, they're taking 20. Heaven forbid you can actually cast the Elder Deep-Fiend without having to lose the other, one of the other ones. So you can go for 5, 5, 10.
So,
and Owen's deck, the Pantheon version, is capable of some of these things as well. They have the Elder Deep-Fiends, and they have the Grapple with the Past, and so on. But they actually don't try to go all in on the Elder Deep-Fiend, because their position was, all we want to do is bridge long enough to Emrakul, because then we will win. And so they were just like, if we get the Elder Deep-Fiend chain, great. But sometimes we just want to go Elder Deep-Fiend, half you down, hit you for 5, and drop Emrakul. Now you're dead.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And one of the big things they wanted to do with Elder Deep-Fiend is just make sure the other person couldn't have enough mana to cast Emrakul. That kind of came to the position of Emrakul is just game over. And it's often only 8 mana, sometimes 7.
The Elder Deep-Fiend chain is powerful, but it can be disrupted, among other things, by other people's Elder Deep-Fiends.
Right.
I was actually surprised at the number of... what is the name of the UU2 counterspell? That Summary Dismissal? I was surprised there weren't more.
Yeah.
Because it's like Owen has 1 in his sideboard, for example. It seems like if your assumption is that other teams are going to figure out that Elder Deep-Fiend and or Emrakul are such key ways to win in the format.
Well, Summary Dismissal doesn't really help very much against Elder Deep-Fiend. Because if you Summary Dismissal the Elder Deep-Fiend...
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not the Elder Deep-Fiend is not the thing that kills you. They just want to tap your land.
But
Even if you Summary Dismissal it...
I guess your lands are still tapped, right?
Because you had to cast the Summary Dismissal, so your mana's tapped. Right. So now Summary Dismissal is just about, it's one of the best answers to Emrakul there is. And that's actually something that's kind of brilliant about the Pantheon, their plan. They actually decided that the game is so all about Emrakul that they actually played only 3 Emrakuls. Instead of a 4th Emrakul, they have a Coax the Blind Eternities in their sideboard, which is particularly amusing when you consider that they have no Eldrazi in their sideboard.
It's just a defense against Infinite Oblate.
Now, when they board in Coax the Blind Eternities, they do sideboard out 1 or more Eldrazi, so that they always have something they can go get proactively. However, it's an important part not only against Infinite Obliteration, but Summary Dismissal and Transgress the Mind. all of these things they want to make sure that they have answers to. The worst, of course, is infinite obliteration, though, because if they get infinite obliterated, then they're powerless because they're so reliant on Evergaol to finish.
What do you think about Wretched Griff? So Andrew Brown played 4 and Owen played 1. I was surprised that Wretched Griff got some constructed love here.
Oh, no. I mean, Jerry's been pushing Wretched Griff from the beginning. Wretched Griff is just, it's really efficient when you have anything that you want to sacrifice. The fact that it can't be countered by Spellcaller is a big deal. And then if you look, take for instance the Pantheon version, sacrificing Pilgrim's Eye to cast Wretched Griff is only like a modest upgrade.
That's cool.
But it's still a very nice one, and it gives them another option. It's another thing that they can go get with any of their tutors, and it can be sacrificed to help cast an Elder Deep-Fiend. It's the right cost, so that you can actually just play Elder Deep-Fiend on the cheap. And Brown actually went much further because he has creatures he actively wants to sacrifice.
Primal Druid, Matter Reshaper.
Exactly. Both Matter Reshaper and Primal Druid allow you to upgrade your Wretched Griff. Has a body that's like a pretty convenient size for keeping up the pressure that can't be spellcaller. And the fact that they're sacrificing, you're actually turning that to an advantage. I mean, often you would rather Matter Reshaper be dead than alive.
Oh, sure. You might get like another Matter Reshaper.
And more importantly, you can develop your mana base. See, a big part of the thing they realize is that with all this tapping of each other's lands to build their deep things, you want to be the person with more land in play. You want to just have more permanents total, whatever they are, you know? So what do you think about the ramp deck that Reed played? Another Kozilek's Return deck.
Yeah, Reed said that he played it because he thought it was the most consistent way to get Emrakul online, right? Which I guess that's based on just 4 Nissus Pilgrims. He has like slightly more ramp, right? 2 Hedron's Archive. Traverse the Uvenwald, I guess, helps find it. I don't know. I found this deck to be a little eclectic. It's not. I assume it's awesome, right? Because the deck has 1 Uvenwald Hydra, 2 World Breakers, 2 Dragonlord Atarkas. I'm guessing in 22 land. So I guess the 23rd and the 24th primary mana sources are rounded out by Hedron Crawlers here. But yeah, so I assume it's awesomely tuned. But I don't know. This isn't. It's not scratching my right itch. No. When I saw like Brad's ramp deck from the last Pro Tour, I was just like, wow, this thing is amazing. I loved every bit of it. But this one, I don't know yet.
It's worth taking a look for a second at Kozilek's Return and just how powerful and warping of an effect Kozilek's Return is having. Because Elder Deep-Fiend, and also to a degree the Lash, the Lurker, is it the Lash Weed Lurker? The fact that there are all these new Eldrazi that can be cast for cheap. The Elder Deep-Fiend, though, in particular, the fact that it has Flash, it's really revolutionized the nature of Kozilek's Return. Because when Kozilek's Return is in the graveyard and gets triggered by an Elder Deep-Fiend, say on turn 4 or 5 or 6, it can't be spellcalled at that point. Even though it costs 3, it doesn't count as being cast. It's just an active. It's just a triggered ability. And so it's an uncounterable instant speed 5 damage, which is enough to kill everything. Which
except for Elder Deep-Fiends.
Well, no, I'm talking in the Band Company deck, though.
Oh, in the Band.
Because like a common sequence that would happen is that somebody can go Archangel Avacyn, and then in response to the Archangel Avacyn on your end step, you kill everything.
Including the Archangel Avacyn, right? Because
including the Archangel Avacyn.
Put the indestructible effect on the stack. 5 to everybody. Archangel Avacyn's only a 4/4. Boom, boom.
And actually, one of the lines that they would take sometimes is Elder Deep-Fiend on your opponent's upkeep on turn 5 or 6, and then they actually sacrifice I'm sorry, they tap all their mana to cast an Archangel anyway, just to use the mana. And then in response, you sacrifice, they flash down, or they would often just float the mana. But you can actually Elder Deep-Fiend again on your own turn if you want, in order to kill everything, because your first Elder Deep-Fiend will live through the 5 damage from Kozilek's Return.
Oh, that's hot. So you get an attacker.
Right. And you've killed them all. I mean, you tapped all their mana, and you were able to actually to finish them off. But I think Kozilek's Return is it is every bit as defining of a card in this format as Spellcaller. Whether it's Elder Deep-Fiend or Emrakul or Worldbreaker or any or Distended Mindbender, any of these, all of these different Eldrazi that are triggering Kozilek's Returns have radically changed the way that the rules of engagement for Standard. I mean, if you look, one of the winning decks that was a 4-color Team-Merge deck of sorts, not Team-Merge, but a 4-color Emerge deck. It was based on a lot more graveyard shenanigans, using black for Haunted Dead and Prized Amalgam. And it was actually set up like a Soul Tie deck, where it had a little bit of the elements of the zombie deck that people were talking about. And it also, it also had things like it was able to use Valdarin Pariah and Haunted Dead in order to help cast Elder Deep-Fiend. And that's something we had talked about, was using Valdarin Pariah in order to enable some of these Emerge strategies. And Noose Constrictor as an additional outlet. Like when you have Jace and Noose Constrictor, then it becomes very, a lot more exciting to have some of these cards that are sort of graveyard cards, sort of madness cards, sort of whatever. But they actually used Kozilek's Return in the main deck with no way to cast it. Now, they did have a mountain in the sideboard, but they actually had no way to cast their Kozilek's Returns. They were entirely relying on Haunted Dead, Jace Vryn's Prodigy, and the Noose Constrictor in order to discard it, just to trigger with their Elder Deep-Fiends.
That's cool.
And even though Distended Mindbender is only a 5/5, where it ostensibly dies to Kozilek's Return, it's still sideboard Distended Mindbender, and can use it in conjunction with Kozilek's Return if need be, because as long as the Distended Mindbender is the thing that's triggering the Kozilek's Return, the Kozilek's Return does the 5 damage before the Distended Mindbender hits play.
So I just want to go back to the red-green ramp decks that were top 8. You're just going to contrast Reed Duke's version versus Ken's. So one thing that I thought was odd about it is that Reed's only got 22 lands, 2 of which are Drownyard Temples, but he doesn't have any, Magmatic Insights or Tormenting Voices. Versus Ken Yukihiro has got 4 copies of Tormenting Voice, but no Drownyard Temples. Instead, the defining thing about his deck is 4 copies of Collective Defiance, which seem a little out of place to me. But every time I saw him win a match, it was only because he had just drawn Collective Defiance.
So Collective Defiance, I think, is just a very underrated card to begin with. People were initially just focusing on using it as a Searing Blaze / Exquisite Firecraft variant for Red Aggro. However, as was shown here, the card can be used as a very versatile answer to creatures, answer to planeswalkers, additional threat, and here's the big thing. When you are playing This Is Pilgrimage on turn 3, you ramp straight into 5. And then what you do on turn 4 with your 5 mana is you cast Collective Defiance. You kill a creature, you go upstairs, sometimes killing a planeswalker, and you discard your hand and draw a new hand with no loss of card economy. And when you do so, you actually rapidly fill your graveyard for the purposes of bringing down Emrakul faster.
Or this legend actually, Widow, right? It also helps your delirium count.
Yes, 100%. And this is actually a very mana efficient way. Instead of spending all your mana casting Tormented Voice and things like that, Collective Defiance lets you spend just 1 mana more than Tormenting Voice, but it kills a creature, and it goes upstairs, and it loots your whole hand. This lets him play a whole bunch more reactive cards. If you notice, he was able to play a lot of things like Fiery Impulse, in addition to Hangerback Walker. Like when you have cards like Fiery Impulse and Hangerback Walker that are not very good against half the decks in the format, it's dangerous playing with so many in a ramp deck traditionally, which is why you see some of the other ramp decks like Reed's play so many fewer. Whereas in his list, he was able to actually get away with playing more because so often he's just going to be like, well, I'm just going to collect Defiance, and if I discard a Fiery Impulse and a Hangerback Walker, that's 3 more types, 4 counting the collective Defiance. Like, you're already there. You can just go turn 4, Collective Defiance, control the board, and sometimes play Emrakul within 2 turns.
I think that the ultimate version of red-green ramp for Standard is probably going to be some hybridization of multiple of these ideas, including some of the ones from Brad's deck from last season. Like, I just see so many of these ideas coming together in an interesting way. Like, don't you think that even out of the sideboard, Goggles plus Collective Defiance might be cool, right? And
I don't know. So here's the reason why they moved away from Goggles. And there were a lot of Goggles people at the tournament. They just did very, very terribly. The problem with Goggles, and it's a great combo, it's a great interaction, and it's possible to experience a resurgence because it is quite good against Black-White, which won the tournament, of course. But the problem with Goggles is the Goggles is all about value. And the format has radically changed. Value, it's dead. It's over for value. The format is now about setting up the coup de grace.
It's Elder just all over the tops. That's the argument.
Yeah, well, not just over the top. There's the balance. On the one end is over the top, and Emrakul is the only top. Emrakul tops everything by a lot. Emrakul is the top. However, the other side is the tempo. It's acceleration. It's tapping your opponent's stuff. It's rituals. It's tempo-based permission. It's anything that is able to speed. It's to control the pace of the game so that you're not the last one. You're not the one who gets over the top by your opponent. And Goggles is an inefficient ramp card that comes down when other people are doing things like playing Ishkan and Graph Widow. And it promises a personal Howling Mine. It's forking your cards every turn, but the problem is that people don't want the game to plan. They don't want the game to go on very many turns after they've played their first 5-cost card. Ishkan and Graph Widow is trying to buy enough time so that you don't die before it's about Emrakuls. Pyromancer's Goggles does a very poor job of keeping you alive. And a lot of the cards that are great for copying are of less value now. Like, for instance, Lightning Axe is not what the format is about. The format goes wide much more so than tall, and when it does go tall, it's often things like Elder Deep-Fiend or Emrakul that are not or Worldbreaker that are not vulnerable to a Lightning Axe.
Just too tall.
Yeah, and it does not enough damage.
There are a couple of things I just can't get behind in Ken Yukihiro's deck. 3 Kozilek's Return main deck. No 4th Kozilek's Return.
Which card? I missed that.
Kozilek's Return. He has 3 main deck, no 4th Kozilek's Return. It's
a little surprising, but it's actually it might be one of those next level type of deals where he was figuring that the format is so warped that he was gambling that at the winner's circle there would be an awful lot of Kozilek's Return decks instead of decks that lose the Kozilek's Return. Because like Kozilek's Return is not good against the Teamerge deck,
no.
and it's not good against a lot of against the ramp decks. Basically, any of the Emrakul decks. Now, it's probably too risky of a gamble, in my opinion, but it's not out of the question. I would be surprised, but that's definitely a pretty inbred metagame call,
Yeah, that's the main. What do you think about Weaver of Lightning, which is a card he had in the sideboard? I thought it's kind of clunky.
I like the card. I do love the card. I think the card is good, and it's going to have a number of days in the sun. Not just this format. I mean, standard, but like different standards to come. It's a great card, underrated. However, I think that this is not necessarily the best time because I think that Weaver of Lightning, it loves beating up on spirits and humans and jackal pups and stuff, but is dead for all those. All those decks got obliterated. So I think it is not the time for Weaver of Lightning, relatively speaking, but it might just be so good that it's still worth playing some. However, I would guess that card is slightly on the decline despite the fact that it's great technology. I just think that its prey is being obsoleted. The format has just shifted so much.
All right, so Weaver Lightning is a 3 casting cost card that is really good at beating up things that have 1 toughness. But there is a card that is also a 3 casting cost card that is just unbelievable at beating up on things with 1 toughness. There's 2 different decks that played that card that made this top 8, and I think that you probably have a lot of stuff to say about both of those decks. Who do you want to start with, Sam Pardue? Or you want to start with Lucas Blohan for the last 10 or so minutes?
Oh, whichever.
So, last week you said going into the Pro Tour you would play Black-Green Delirium if given the option. Sam did so and had the best finish of his career.
Oh, yeah, I mean, definitely a great finish. And he played Green-Black Delirium, kind of a nice hybrid. It had a lot of the elements of the streamlined Green-Black Delirium deck that we talked about, and borrowed some elements from the Sultai control style of Delirium. And it very, very much, I mean, I agree with basically, the only thing that was a little surprising to me was the lack of Gnarlwood Dryads. However, he really embraced Languish, and we talked about a little bit over the last 2 weeks how the Sultai Delirium style the Sultai style of Delirium deck, the blue is just really not adding all that much.
I agree.
It's really not adding that much. And by cutting Jace and definitely cutting Oath of Jace, the end result was a streamlined, consistent version that still could draw enough cards and get enough value out of its Delirium. It wasn't like it was short on that. And I definitely like the direction he went with it.
So Grimflayer does much the same job as Oath of Jace in this deck, except costing 1 less mana, actually hitting the opponent for 2 or 4 damage, and actually doing a better job of manipulating your library all at the same time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Grimflayer is just a great card. I mean, a 2-mana 4/4 trample. But it's also it's easy to forget that it gives you as much selection as a Prognostic Sphinx when it hits. And it's particularly good with Grasp of Darkness, because if you have a Grim Slayer and they block, and then if they block with just 1 creature, you can actually Grasp the Darkness, the creature that blocks the Grim Slayer, and get the trample damage to go through.
Yeah, I mean the curve on this deck is unbelievable. Like you can go first turn Deadweight or Duress, second turn Grimflayer, third turn Liliana the Last Hope. And I think this is probably of the available Liliana the Last Hope decks, I think this is the most impressive that we've seen so far.
Well, how many Deadweights did he play main deck?
He has 1 in the sideboard, none in the main deck.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say that's actually I thought one of the things that he did was the Deadweight can still be decent, but I think one of the things he was gambling on is that and I think very wisely so, was that the Jackalpuck decks, like Humans or Red Aggro or Spirits or whatever, they were going to be so brutalized by the existence of Kozilek's Return and Liliana the Last Hope that there would be a lot less of them, and he wanted to move away from Deadweight main deck and instead rely on Languish because of its strength against the Bank Company decks. But yeah, I think this is absolutely just a fantastic deck. An excellent use of Ishkana, Graph Widow, Liliana the Last Hope, and just a lot of cards. A lot of really strong cards. And we predicted before that Delirium was going to be the real deal, and it actually proved to be. It was the most popular major archetype, and it dramatically overperformed. It performed very, very, very well. But what's interesting is this Pro Tour was kind of unusual in that there were 5 archetypes that had that were if you collapse down like all the different flavors of Delirium, all the different flavors of Emerge, and so on. If you collapse them down into decks, you end up with 5 major archetypes. There's the Bank Company decks, the black-white mid-range decks, the Emerge decks, the Delirium decks, and the Ramp decks, exactly. And what's interesting is the Delirium decks, the Emerge decks, the Ramp decks, and the black-white mid-range decks, all 4 of those decks overperformed. Bank Company slightly underperformed, and every other strategy besides those 4 got murdered. And so it really does look like there were 5 real decks, because even though Bank Company was 49%, it was so strong and so defining of a force, and it will surely rebound once people have to aim for the other decks. But this was definitely a Pro Tour with 5 basic strategies that were good. And the one that we haven't touched on yet, I'm actually curious your thoughts on Lucas's black-white deck, Lucas's black-white mid-range deck, which is the one deck out of the decks that we've been describing. It's the one deck that doesn't use Ishkan Grass Widow or Kozilek's Return.
Or Emrakul, right? Of the decks we talked about.
Or Emrakul.
Only Bant Company doesn't play Emrakul, right? And this one.
Well, no.
Of the decks we talked about today, I'm saying. Every other deck plays Emrakul.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Andrew Brown has it in his sideboard, but he still plays it.
I mean, I was saying the other T-Merge deck plays 3, right? So that's the...
Yep. Andrew Brown has one in his sideboard. I mean, it's real. He does tutor for it, too.
So, first of all, I was absolutely shocked at the performance of this deck. Not only was I shocked because in Lucas's pre-top 8 interview, he said, my deck doesn't have any good matchups, right? It's not just that he won the Pro Tour. He won it 9-2, right? He had 9-1 or 9-2. He had like 1 or 2 losses in the first round, and then 3-0, 3-0'd in a situation where I think almost the entire world, if not the planet who was watching, thought that Owen was going to win that matchup pretty easily. But he 3-0'd Owen. And so you obviously have to get lucky as well as play well to accomplish this. But it almost looked like he didn't have the tools to do so. If you look at this deck and you just line it out, his ability to interact with some of the new strategies coming out of Eldritch Moon are pretty limited, right? He's got 2 copies of Transgress the Mind, which, don't get me wrong, including one in the sideboard, so 3 total, are awesome against Emerge guys, effective against Emrakul, etc. But this is very easily a deck that can get just... I line up my cards, you line up your cards. A lot of your cards aren't doing enough. My cards are just going to run you over, right? Did you get that sense from this deck?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has some elements of the rock going on there.
So,
but the trade-off is that even if it's less than 50% of the time, sometimes your cards do line up right, and you can kind of edge out some value. I mean, it is a consistent deck. It's relatively high quality. It's very durable. I don't think that anybody would pick it as the most appealing or most powerful deck in front of this top 8. And moving forward, I would be surprised if it was one of the 3 most popular or successful archetypes. However, it benefited from the fact that at the top, everybody's decks are all gunning for a different world. You know, it's a bunch of T-Merge and Delirium and Bant Company and Ramp, and he managed to. There's a little bit less hate. I would guess, though, that moving forward, that I wouldn't play the exact same style of black-white. You know, I do think there's some really smart things he was doing, though. You know, like 2 main deck Hallowed Moonlights. I love that. We talked about that earlier on shows, and I think the Hallowed Moonlight main deck is great. I also like the move towards creatures, and this is something we talked about when there was the creatureless black-white deck a couple weeks back. I actually love the move towards creatures, and more importantly, though, 0 main deck Gideons.
So these are really, really head-scratching individual choices for me, right? So it's not just he has so many creatures. So 7 creatures is kind of a lot. You know, I've seen decks that have had 1 copy of Linvala the Preserver in black-white, right? If you're going to play 1 creature...
No, but it's Liliana the Last Hope. We talked about the fact that with Liliana the Last Hope, you want to have at least 6 to 8 creatures in your control deck.
Just so you can draw cards, sure.
Exactly. It's too important of a mess. It's just so much of her power. It's very important.
But Archangel Avacyn is an unusual creature choice for black-white control, I think. Separately, I guess just having Flash is great if people are playing Elder Deep-Fiends. But separately, 26 lands, 100% behind it, no copies of Westvale Abbey?
Well, there's no secure waste. He has nothing to sacrifice. He has no Gideon.
But all those choices are unusual, in my opinion. No secure waste is unusual.
Okay.
I think Gideon's one of his best cards, and it's 4 of in the sideboard.
So let's talk about this for a second. The Archangel Avacyn can't be spell-colored. That's a big deal.
Yeah, huge deal.
As for Kalidas, even though Kalidas can be spell-colored, Kalidas can be played as a 6-drop very easily. You can just put Kalidas down, and if Kalidas does get spell-quellered, it's awesome. Because then when it's least convenient for your opponent, you can grasp a darkness, their spell-queller, in the middle of combat and annihilate them.
Yeah, just eat their
or you can languish the spell-queller and be the one who's left with a Kalidas. When you play Gideon has so much of his value is coming down on turn 4. He's actually a very mediocre 6-drop, comparatively. He falls off a little bit more than Kalidas does. And Gideon is actually just a very rough card to play in the format anyway, because when people are playing Bant Company, they can just kill your Gideon very easily most of the time. They flash down creatures and fly over the top, and that's to say nothing to spell quelling it. But even beyond that, think about the way that Elder Deep-Fiend annihilates Gideon.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I thought that Owen would have such an advantage against Lucas, because you could just proxy any Planeswalker almost for the cards in the T-Merge and the Emrakul decks, and you're putting so much mana, so much card quality into a single Planeswalker, and then before it's had the kind of impact that you want, it's just getting eaten by a huge creature.
But that's the thing. He doesn't play the Gideon's main deck. He's actually just not relying on the Planeswalkers against them. He's just sitting around playing a little bit of a control game. Well, hey, I'm actually going to have to duck out in a minute here, but definitely major congratulations to Lucas, and the moving of Gideon to the sideboard, I think, definitely paid off big for him.
So what do you think, we're moving to the top level. If you're going to play Standard this coming week, what would be the Patrick Chapin recommendation?
Well, I haven't got to play enough of the format since seeing all the new decks. However, from all the people I've talked to, for instance, Luis and Josh and all them, Matt Nass, they said that the Emrakul stuff is just busted. That the Elder Deep-Fiend Emrakul stuff is so busted that they would definitely want to just play that strategy and to move even more into it and figure out how to build an even more anti-Elder Deep-Fiend Emrakul deck that uses Elder Deep-Fiend Emrakul. And I think that my starting point would be trying to play that game. But I'd also be interested to see if perhaps there could be a return of some sort of a control deck now that the format has settled down and is in a little bit less fast of a position. The thing that I'm concerned about, though, is the number of Eldrazi that are so uncounterable. And I don't know that we can count on summary dismissal. So my first inclination is to play an Elder Deep-Fiend Emrakul deck, and I would start with the Pantheon of T-Merge deck.
I concur. The only wrinkle I'd put into that is I probably want to try to play Nissa. Maybe that's wrong.
Nissa seems like it could be good.
I mean, it's similar to Pilgrim's Eye. It's a higher quality card in a lot of situations. So I think that might be...
The thing about Pilgrim's Eye, though, is that it's an artifact. It's really nice to be able to cast your Emrakul a turn earlier,
Yeah, I agree. Especially, you're easily getting into the graveyard because you've got these emerge creatures. All right, Patrick.
Well, you predicted, remember back when we had Pilgrim's Eye as a preview card, you predicted that that Pilgrim's Eye would top 8 a premier event within 1 year. And your prophecy has come true.
I mean,
the Pro Tour is definitely a premier event.
2 or 3 weeks ago, I said I thought it would be one of the key aspects of the Emerge strategy.
And you were right.
So, well, maybe I'll be right about my own tournament performances at some point.
Oh yeah, and dude, congratulations! By the way, didn't you just win RPTQ?
A PPTQ. I wish I won an RPTQ.
Okay, nice.
I will win the RPTQ in a I don't know when it is, in a few weeks and or months. Yeah, so my kids were with their grandparents last weekend, and so I just had a weekend off, and I was just like, wife, can I go play in some Magic tournaments? And she'd be like, yeah, get out of here, stop talking to me. So there was actually a PPTQ in Brooklyn, and then another one in Queens on Saturday and Sunday. So The one on Saturday. Oh, so then I had to make a deck, right? So I haven't played very much Modern, but I've played a lot of Legacy because I spent several years hitting a fair amount number of opens and playing invitationals and stuff. So I just kind of made my own burn deck from Legacy cards that I owned, and I own all the Ravnica Duel Links and everything. And Patrick Sullivan helped me just tune my deck, and I never played it before Saturday morning. I didn't win Saturday, but I did win on Sunday, and so Naya Burn.
Congrats, man.
Cool. Let's just shout out to one of our very loyal patrons and be going.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously to everybody, definitely appreciate the support, tuning in every week, every time somebody shares, and feel free to hit us up on Twitter, Top Level Podcast, or on Facebook, or on Patreon.
Shout out to Brian Silva. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Bye, Patrick.
Bye.
Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis phase. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind.